Punch-Out is one of those classic NES games that most people seem to love, whether they enjoy boxing or not. And there's a good reason for that. It's a good game. And because I feel I've been slacking on review material, and knowing I could play through and get to Tyson in a few hours, I figured what the hey. Why not record a playthrough and review it? So here we are. You play as a tiny boxer named Little Mac as he attempts to battle through a who's who cast of fighters, rising up the ranks and claiming multiple boxing titles. To do this, you just need one win in each bout. Each bout is 3 rounds of 3 minutes each. Of course, the 3 minutes is not real time, and instead, it's probably closer to about a minute or two per round. There are several ways you can defeat your opponent. You can get a simple knockout by beating them up enough so that they stay down for the 10 count. You can get a technical knockout by having your opponent kiss the mat 3 times in one round. Finally, and although it's normally somewhat rare to see this, you can also earn enough points to win the judge's scorecard if the 3 rounds end without a knockout. Little Mac has the same rules for defeat and can be typically knocked out 4 times in a bout total before not being able to get up. TKO rules still do affect him as well. In order to defeat the other colorful boxers, Little Mac has only a small handful of punches. He can throw a left and right punch toward the head by pressing up and either A or B, and a body blow by pressing A or B without pressing up. A always throws a right punch and B a left, so it's very easy to understand. In addition to these basic shots, if you can time a punch at the right moment, you might get a star, of which you can accumulate up to 3 of them. By pressing start, you'll use one of these stars to throw a power punch, causing much more damage to your opponent. You need to be careful though, as getting hit will cause one of these stars to disappear. Along with offense, you do have a bit of defense, in the form of a dodge, performed by pressing right or left, and a block, done by pressing down. You'll probably dodge more than block, but blocking does have its uses. You might also see those hearts that are up in the top of the screen. Think of them as your stamina. When blocking, striking a blocking opponent, or getting hit yourself, these hearts will be drained. If you ever lose them all, Little Mac will turn a different color, signifying that he's fatigued. He can't throw any punches in this state, and is forced to simply stay on the defensive, dodging his opponent's strikes until he gets back a few hearts to resume the offensive. You do also seem to take a bit more damage in this state, so you want to get out of it as quickly as possible. So that's the basics of Punch-Out, and it might look like an action game, but honestly, it's more like a puzzle game. Each boxer has distinct patterns and has visual tells that give away the attack they're about to use. Other boxers have weaknesses, such as being able to knock out Von Kaiser with a single power punch when stunned, or a good gut punch to Bald Bull while he's doing his bull charge. As you move up in the ranks, though, these weaknesses are hidden much more. That's because the difficulty curve spikes sharply once you get to the World Circuit. Until then, boxers are defeated, for the most part, fairly easily. Personally, I think the difficulty ramps up at Soda Popinski, as I've always struggled to knock this guy down. The boxers start attacking much quicker, and the frames you have to properly dodge are reduced. Plus, there were times that I'd dodge. Little Mac would recenter after the dodge and I'd still take damage, even though the boxer's punch was clearly already thrown. This is frustrating, but it's something that you'll have to get used to. In addition, losing can have some very devastating penalties. One loss will allow you to either rematch immediately or drop you an opponent, if you're fighting a title fight. But if you lose again, it's back to the start of the circuit. There are passwords, but they also start Little Mac at the first fighter of the circuit. So if you're struggling at a specific boxer late in that circuit, well, you might be fighting everyone else again. At least if you do manage to get up to the dream bout against Mike Tyson, you do get a password that allows you to start right there. It's well known that he's one of the toughest bosses in the NES era, or maybe of all time. For the first minute and a half, he does nothing but throw uppercuts that will knock you down immediately if any of them strikes Little Mac. After that, the fight does get a little bit easier, but it's still far from a cakewalk. I've only ever completed the game once, and that was years ago, but when you see Little Mac raising his hands in victory with Tyson out on the ground, well, that's one hell of a feeling. The graphics of the game are basic, but still do a great job at detailing all of the oddly shaped boxers, especially for the time. Each boxer has a different personality, which is evident in how they were all drawn. The personality is also visible during the pre-bout versus screens, where you get the different stats and stuff like hometowns. Plus, in between rounds, the boxer will taunt you with some cheesy lines. This kind of stuff would probably never fly in today's PC world, but it's still fun to see and get a quick chuckle at. What's also refreshing is that there are no lazy palette swaps, although you do have to fight a small amount of fighters twice. But they do have different attacks to make them at least a bit more difficult. And yes, Little Mac is tiny in design, but it works perfectly for how the game works. As for the sound, well, there's only one track during bouts. There are some other minor songs during the unskippable bike sequences after winning a championship, and other small, several second long tunes during other areas. You'd think that the fight music would get annoying, but it actually doesn't. Also, Mario is the ref, but that's pretty obvious. But when you defeat Super Macho Man, there's a newspaper that shows something about Mario being a father? Huh. So that explains why he keeps rescuing the princess. The game, sadly, isn't perfect, at least not in my opinion. For one, there's no pause option. Seriously, why is there no pause? Select isn't used during a round, although you can press it rapidly in between rounds to regain a bit more life back once per fight. So why can't select be a pause option during a round? Oh well. But more importantly, I feel that the difficulty ramps up way too quickly. This wouldn't be a problem if the game allowed me to have infinite rematches, but when you are 4 or 5 fights into the circuit and get a game over, well, I don't want to have to fight the other boxes again over and over, especially if you struggled at a couple of them. In order to get enough content for this review, I had to resort to save states on the Retron. My pal Jers can get to Tyson within about 30 minutes, but it feels like it takes me about 30 hours. Never said I was good at the game, but devs, throw me a bone here. Some more music would have been nice too. Maybe a different song for each circuit? Then again, I think every other Punch-Out game uses the same one song for the fight mentality too, so maybe that's just their thing. Regardless of whether you have the original Mike Tyson's Punch-Out or the later released Punch-Out featuring Mr. Dream, Punch-Out is a must-own for any NES player. Yes, the game gets me angry and on the verge of throwing a controller. Yes, I had to resort to modern conveniences in order to get anywhere. But yes, the game is still crazy fun to play. And if you can actually complete it, you really do feel a true sense of accomplishment. It's still cheap to own a physical copy if you're into that kind of thing, but if you're not, there's plenty of ways to get it, including the NES Classic, online Nintendo shops, that kind of thing. Give it a shot if you're into challenging puzzle games that mask themselves as an action game. Final score? 6 out of 7. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.